Hey peeps, I will continue with my tyranny of videos today. I hope you're well. I've had some requests to cover this group before, several actually, and I just got a package yesterday with a couple of new old records from Seefeel, Mark Clifford and Seefeel. And yeah, I've had some requests for this, so I thought this is the time to do that. People who watch my channel seem to appreciate Seefeel, so I have a long, rich history with this group, and they have been reissuing all of their stuff in recent years. So I thought, let's carry on this torch of me talking about reissues. I know I complain all the time about how I hate reissues, but that's pretty much all I've been buying this year. I bought some new stuff, but not a lot. I've bought more reissues in the last couple of years than I ever have. Some of these Seefeel records though came out 4 or 5 years ago, so I just thought let's go through it. Yeah, Seefeel. You guys seem to love Mark Clifford. I don't blame you. I love him too. I don't love recent Seefeel like I love the early stuff. I don't know. It doesn't scratch the itch like it used to. The newer stuff just kind of falls flat for me, but the old stuff still sounds really, really cool to me. I think what I like about the early stuff is it had a much more clear dub influence, which I love. The newer stuff doesn't have that, so I mean maybe a tiny bit here and there, but the early stuff it was very much dub music or music that existed in the world of dub. It was experimental electronic music, but with a dub influence, and you just didn't really hear that. And you don't hear it much anymore. I mean, in fact, you've never quite heard it like Seefeel. He would take dub and experimental electronic music and kind of fuse that with shoegaze type elements. And when you put all that together, you had Seefeel, and nobody else was doing it. So I love Seefeel just as much as you guys. Again, not so much the recent stuff, excuse me, but when I think of classic Seefeel stuff, I think of the very early stuff and then the warp stuff. There have been phases of Seefeel, and you Seefeel fans know what I'm talking about, but there's the early stuff that had the really hardcore dub influence, and then there's the warp stuff. Sorry, my throat's going nuts right now. There was the warp era. He's still in the warp era, but and he put something out on Reflex too. Richard James's label. So he has a cool sound. All the coolest cats in town liked him and released his records, and he's a super talent. And he's been reissuing a lot of stuff lately. And this is what just came up yesterday in the mail. I got records. I know if you haven't been watching my other videos, it's been a struggle to get records delivered. Our current climate in the United States, things are getting delayed and damaged, and unless you're ordering from within the United States, then stuff gets to you on time. But if you're ordering from overseas, things are dramatically delayed. I ordered this from Beggar's Banquet, by the way. If you're interested in picking this up, this came out, was it last year? I don't know, a year. This has been reissued. This album has been reissued a number of times. I have the original vinyl of this. By the way, I'm not showing my entire Seefeel collection. I was just going through it when I started doing this video, and I have over 20 Seefeel records. I have everything Seefeel's ever done on vinyl. Everything. Even the reissues now. So I'm not going to sit here and show them because people just don't. Once my videos run over 15 minutes, nobody watches them. So I'm going to try to keep this under 15, 20 minutes. I have the original issue of this, and they reissued it, I don't know, a decade or so ago, and I have that, and now this. This is kind of the ultimate version you want, though, and I would recommend if you want this on vinyl, you should go pick it up. I stalled on it. I was getting ready to order it from Bleep, and now it's not available on Bleep, and Discogs sellers are asking way too much for it. This is still at retail price from Beggar's Banquet. That's where I ordered it from. But if you're on the fence about buying this like I was, you probably want to go pick this up because Seefeel's records tend to go out of print and they get really expensive. So, and this wasn't cheap anyway. This was like $65. There are 4 records stuffed in here, but yeah, it's not like this was cheap, but prices are already going up. Anyway, this is a great album. This was I can't remember if this was my intro to Seefeel or not. I feel like it was a 12-inch on 2 Pure. I don't remember at this point. This is definitely the first album experience I had, and most of us who were paying attention to this music back in the early 90s, this was our first experience with Seefeel in album form because it's the first album. Here it is. But it's expanded. The reason I stalled with this was I already have all this music, but they just released another reissue in the last few weeks, and because I was buying that, it made me want to get this, so I just threw it in the stack. But this is classic Seefeel. This has got that dub influence, the experimental electronic influence, a very early 90s sounding record, and really cool stuff. It doesn't surprise me that the shoegaze community glommed onto Seefeel because he's just got that this music has that feel, that ethereal feel. And again, you didn't hear shoegaze being interwoven with electronic music in the early 90s. It just wasn't happening yet. It was happening in tiny little flourishes here and there, but you didn't really hear it full on until Mark Clifford did it with Seefeel. And we all felt it. I mean, at least the friends I had back in the early 90s, like we all loved electronic music and experimental techno music and stuff like that. And we also all loved shoegaze music. Like at least the crew I was hanging with, we all loved Aphex Twin and Ride and Slow Dive and Autechre and LFO. Like we liked all that stuff, Spiritualized. We were on board with all that music, but it didn't all sound like each other. Well, Mark Clifford came together and he mixed it all up in a pot. And this was the first album. You guys know this. I'm assuming most people who watch this video, you're Seefeel fans. And this has been reissued a number of times. I do think this is probably the ultimate version you want. It's 4 albums, and it's just got everything from that era. Well, you know what? I wasn't gonna show records, but I will show some of the sleeves here. It's a nice package, and it's kind of cheap at the same time, but you do get nice little, individual, unique inner sleeves for each record. But here are the 4 records. It's packed with stuff. You get that first album, and you get all the 12-inch material from that. Not all of it, but you get some of the 12-inch material from that era. You get some unreleased stuff. It's packed with stuff. The 4 records are they're crammed into this spine. I mean, this spine was made really for a double album, but they crammed 4 records in here, so kind of a cheap presentation aesthetically wise. But the amount of music you get kind of offsets that. Whether or not you want to spend $65 on this, it's up to you. I definitely was on the fence about it since I have most of this music anyway, as I mentioned before. But it's Seefeel. Many people would argue that this is the best Seefeel album. I would not agree with that. I'll get to my favorite Seefeel album in a minute here. But this is really cool stuff. I remember at the time, I would be out all night DJing a rave somewhere or going to a rave to dance all night. And this was the kind of music you'd put on after the rave to kind of bring yourself down. You old school ravers, do you remember this? Like you'd go to the rave and then on the ride home you'd try to decompress by listening to something more chill. And at least me and the crew I was in, a lot of times we would bring ourselves down with like shoegaze type music. You know, we'd be listening to jackhammer, house, and techno and jungle beats all night, and we just want to kind of float down to earth with something more calm and collected. And it was stuff like this. I mean, it was Ride and Slow Dive and that kind of stuff too. Cocteau Twins. But then this came out, and I was like, now we have electronic music meeting the shoegaze stuff. Good stuff, man. And again, I want to point out this early Seefeel stuff had a very strong dub vibe. Something he doesn't really do anymore with the sound. You know, it had almost a very Rastafarian tone to it. So you had experimental electronic music, you had shoegaze, and then you had dub. Cool sound, man. I mean, how many bands can you name that mixed all those genres together into one stew? There really aren't any that did it as well as Mark Clifford did. Anyway, this is the newest reissue of this. You can go find multiple versions of. I don't know how many versions there are. Again, I have the original version, and then I bought a reissue a decade or so ago, and now this one. So I think there might be another one or two out there. I have three. This sounds good too. The pressing's good. I didn't play all of the records through. I just got it yesterday, but I did listen to a couple sides, and it sounded great. Good sound, loud, pressed well, mastered well. This is a solid pressing. I would recommend it if you want the vinyl. This is the reason I finally decided to pull the trigger on the last one. This just came out. Pure Impure. I have the original of Pure Impure, and this is the same era of that first album, but I couldn't resist it because it has both Aphex Twin mixes on it. And I have that original Time to Find Me 12-inch with the Aphex Twin mixes on it, but it's hammered. I bought the thing, back in 92, 93, whenever it came out, and I've listened to it hundreds of times. It's just hammered. I've played it so much, it's just worn out. So when they were re-releasing them both here, I was like, I gotta have them. And I'm happy to have it. I mainly bought it for Aphex Twin, but the EP tracks from this to Pure era are fantastic. I mean, Plain Song is on here. How good is Plain Song? That might be arguably one of my, I was going to say my favorite Seefeel track. It's one of my favorites. It's hard to choose a favorite, but Plain Song is a gorgeous song. Minky Starshine is on here. Very dubby. Again, early Seefeel has that dub vibe in a big way. But this compiles the EPs, basically. Yeah, you get the Aphex mixes, Time to Find Me, the original version, Plain Song, Minky Starshine, Come Alive. If you like those early Seefeel EPs, they're all here. And combining that with this, come on, it's classic stuff here. And this is a pretty good pressing too. I dropped the needle down, listen to some of this. You get nice printed inner sleeves, glossy inner sleeves. It's a nice aesthetic package here, as all these reissues are. Would I recommend this? Hell yes, I would. There are two Aphex Twin mixes, but it's the same mix. It's basically one is slow and the other's fast. Which one's the original mix? I don't know. It's always seemed to me that the fast mix is the original mix. It's basically, it seems like that's the original Aphex mix, and then the slow mix is basically, it's like putting a 45 record on your turntable and playing it at 33 and a third. That's what it sounds like. It's the same exact mix. It's just played slower. I prefer the fast mix. The slow mix just seems like It seems like the Aphex mix played at the wrong speed. But whatever, they both have value, but I prefer the fast mix. It just seems like that's the original mix as intended. So lest you think you're getting two different Aphex mixes, you're really not. You know, you could basically get the fast mix, and if the fast mix was played at 45, you could just tone it down to 33, and then you'd have the slow mix. So anyway, they're both presented here at the same RPM. There you go. Here they are, just like they were on that original 12-inch. Quite frankly, the Aphex mix is the best fucking thing on here. It's just me, I'm a huge Aphex fan. Nothing against Seefeel, but it was a good mix. I could see why Mark Clifford wanted Aphex to remix him because it's just kind of they complement each other. I'm gonna go back in time and talk about some reissues that came out, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. This is my personal favorite Seefeel release, Sucker, and this is the expanded 3 LP edition. This is my personal favorite Seefeel. I think again it's partly nostalgic reasons, but you have to. It's hard to explain if you weren't around in the early '90s buying this stuff, but this kind of music was building steam in the early '90s. It kind of started in 1990. They just kept getting better and better, and every week there was a slew of amazing releases. You couldn't keep up with it. There was so much good stuff coming out. This came out in 1995, which was a banner year for experimental electronic music. It just kind of reached an apex in 95. So much brilliant shit came out that year. It was stunning. My head was spinning. There's so much good stuff. And this is part of that. So I have very intense, warm, fuzzy memories of 1995, 30 years ago, when I was buying this stuff. Amidst all of the great, brilliant 90s experimental electronic music that I was listening to, this was one of the albums that I listened to the most. Sucker. Brilliant, brilliant album. And this was on Warp. Seefeel moved on over to Warp, and they put this out. And man, what a great, great album. It just dawned on me too. When I pre-ordered this, I got a t-shirt with this. Hang on a minute. I'm going to pause this video. You're not even going to know the difference. I'm going to pause really quickly. You see what happened there? How did I forget that I had this when I'm doing my Seefeel video? Yes, I pre-ordered all of these reissues 4 or 5 years ago, and this is what came with it. Plus a 12-inch. I'm not going to show the 12-inch because it's just a generic black sleeve. You guys know what I'm talking about. You Seefeel fans, you probably did the same thing. But yeah, it came with a shirt. Check this out. I don't know how I forgot to wear this, but I'm glad I remembered. Better to remember midway through than not at all, right? Anyway, I will continue wearing my Seefeel shirt. Great album. Definitely my favorite Seefeel album, Seefeel release, period. They reissued it. The reissue sounds fantastic. I have the original, obviously the original vinyl of this. Because I'm a total dork and a nerd, I recorded both. I don't hear any differences. So if you think you need that original vinyl, I wouldn't recommend you do it. It's probably way more expensive, and it doesn't sound any different than this. Also, you get an extra disc here. This is a 3-album set. The original album was 2 records, so you get an extra album of unreleased stuff from this era. And it's very good. So don't bother with the original press. You're going to pay more money, you're going to get less. And it sounds exactly the same as this. Get this. Definitely my favorite Seefeel release. God, this is good stuff. I mean, this is when they started kind of abandoning the dub vibe, and they started going with, the more. They started doubling down on the more ethereal vibe, which was always there, but they started kind of getting rid of the dub vibe, going full ethereal electronic music. And I know I said I prefer the dub stuff, but I usually, with bands, I tend to gravitate toward that bridge era. Like an artist will create music and then they'll kind of move to another sound. But there's always a bridge album. And this is kind of the bridge album for Seefeel. Like they were still hanging on to what they'd been doing, their roots. And then Clifford kind of started going in this new direction, but he's still hanging on to the roots. And that's what this album is. It's a great. If anyone were to ask me if they didn't know Seafeel and they wanted me to recommend an album to them, I'd point them to here because it just kind of encapsulates everything Clifford does really well, better than any other album in my opinion. Fucking love this album. Great album. I also bought this reissue. I'm not even gonna say it. CH Vox, whatever. This came out on Reflex originally. This got re-released with a totally new cover. It basically has that original album EP, really. It has that, and then it has other unreleased stuff that we hadn't heard up to the point that this got released. And Warp reissued this, and it sounds excellent. I know I complain about Warp. They're a frustrating label now. I don't understand what their identity is anymore. It just seems like they sign anybody. Doesn't matter the type of music it is. They sign a lot of subpar music bands now. There was a time in the 90s really that Warp, if it came out on Warp, you knew it was of exceedingly high quality. I don't think Warp has done that in decades now. They just don't. I don't really understand what their identity is anymore. But one thing they always do well is reissue their own bands. Every time they reissue an album, it sounds great. It doesn't sound any different than the original press. There are some exceptions, like those of you who bought those Boards of Canada reissues that came out a decade or so ago, like those had problems. I mean, if you had the original vinyl, you don't have to worry about it. I had all those records anyway, and I bought the reissues just because, and then it was like, oh yeah, these definitely don't sound as good. Something happened with the Boards of Canada stuff. I don't know. But these sound great. This was never my favorite Seafeel release, but I still like it. And the Redux version's really good. Warp does a solid job. This, of the reissues, excuse me. Sucker is my favorite album in general for Seafeel, but of the reissues, I think this is probably my favorite. I like the way they compiled all the singles. This is basically like the Warp era stuff with a couple of other things on it. Most importantly for me personally, this has the Stare Through EP, which is fantastic. Other than the Sucker album, I would say that Stare Through is my favorite Seafeel release. It also has Tide, which is the B-side to the Fractured 10-inch. That originally came out as a 10-inch on Warp. That was the single that came with the Sucker album. Tide is a great song, and it's on here, right there. And you get the Autechre remix. When do you not need Autechre? Autechre makes any release better. The minute you see Autechre on a release, you're like, oh, hell yeah, I'm buying this shit. Why would I not buy it? Autechre and Seafeel together? Are you kidding me? How does it get any better? Well, I guess it gets better if you ask Aphex Twin to remix, but whatever. Autechre, Aphex Twin, come on. It depends on the day. Some days I like Autechre more, other days I like Aphex Twin more. It depends, right? They're both gods. But you get the Autechre mix, you get the Stare Through EP, the whole EP, you get Tide, the B-side, to Fractured. Very cool little compilations, a double LP. You get those random straggler Warp tracks on this one. And guess what? It sounds great. And also, to my knowledge, the Autechre remix never got released on vinyl at the time. So to my knowledge, I think this is the only place you can find the Autechre remix on wax. I might be wrong about that. But as far as I know, this is the only place you get it on vinyl. So worth picking up. But oh, by the way, I want to mention too. See, I'm already over 25 minutes now, or 20 minutes. Damn, I wanted to keep it under 20. There's a lot to talk about here, though, man. It's Seefeel. Going back to this, um, just to match my shirt here. Uh, I can't imagine you Mark Clifford fans don't know this, but he had another name in the 90s. It was called Disjecta, and I would highly recommend you check that out if you haven't done it. I can't imagine you Clifford fans don't know about it, but he released an album called Clean Pit and Lid, right? Clean Pit and Lid. It's got kind of a gold cover. Excellent album. Excellent. I'll probably piss off a lot of Seefeel fans here, but I don't care. Other than Sucker, I think Clean Pit and Lid is the best thing Mark Clifford ever did. Pick up Disjecta, Clean Pit and Lid. Also look for the single Looking for Snags. He put out a double 12-inch on Warp as Disjecta called Looking for Snags. I mean, it sounds like Seefeel. It's just a little bit more clangy. The drums are a little bit more prominent. It's a little less ethereal. Disjecta is excellent. Go check that out. All on Warp. I've kind of been hoping that Warp would re-release that stuff too. In my brain, it's like, well, if you're going to reissue all the Seefeel stuff, why wouldn't you reissue the Disjecta stuff? But I think people know Seefeel. I don't know that many people know Disjecta, but you should. Great stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about the more recent Seefeel stuff because frankly, I don't really love it. I think it's okay. But compared to this stuff, I don't know. It's like night and day to me. I deeply respect Seefeel and Mark Clifford. It's just a preference. I don't love recent Mark Clifford stuff. Sorry, I just don't. I think this is the peak. Early mid 90s. This is the time to be a Seefeel fan. And I really enjoyed diving into all these reissues. And I look forward to having more time to checking out the quality of this, although I've listened to a couple tracks and it sounds fantastic. This just came out. By the way, if you're looking to get these on vinyl, these reissues are readily available. If you're looking to get all of the stuff on the original pressings, I wouldn't bother, man. These reissues sound great, and these are still available and cheap. I want you guys to save your money. Money is tight right now. The economy's horrible. So I want you guys to understand you have options. If you want to go buy this stuff on vinyl, this has all been reissued, and it's still available at reasonable prices. Don't bother with the original pressings. I have them. They don't sound any worse or better than these. Seefeel. Mark Clifford. I hope you enjoyed my Seefeel video. I do love Mark Clifford and what he does. Listening to these records now really takes me back, man. I know I always go on about being a super nostalgic guy, but I am. I like going back to that period. It's funny, like in the early mid 90s when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I was burying myself into this type of music. At that time, you don't know that this music is going to be so legendary in the coming decades, but I feel an intense sense of pride knowing that I was there when this music was happening. It's just, I love it when newer generations and younger generations find this music and they really connect to it. I feel proud that I was there at ground zero checking it out as it was being released. I hope younger generations have those moments too with their own music. It's something that you don't know you're going through at the time, but then when you see that music become legendary and you think back to the time that you were there listening to it, it just it gives it a whole new flavor, a lot more weight. And when I listen to this Seefeel stuff, I feel that. I'm glad I was listening to this stuff, and I feel a sense of pride that I was paying attention to it, because this really is timeless, beautiful music, and you should go check this out. Later.